Welcome to the weekly developer log for Sonic Entropy. If this is the first time that you're hearing about our game, then hello! My name is Blitzy, and I'll be guiding you through our journey from start to finish to build what we feel could become the ultimate boost formula Sonic game to date. Our goal is to build from scratch our own engine utilizing our own physics, creating our own graphics, our own character models, animations, and artwork to craft the most finely tuned Sonic fan game experience possible for you all. But first, a bit of an introduction to the creators of this new adventure. I might be a streamer first who doesn't understand an ounce of code, but I am an artist. In fact, I spent the first official stream drawing the art you see here. This has since been set as the profile picture across all of our social media sites. I will also be doing the animatic work for the story once scripting is complete. Speaking of our story, I'm also handling that personally. I have been a huge Sonic fan ever since I was a young child, and I have a solid grasp on how to write compelling media, having been a musician for almost a decade and a half now, using my lyricism as a way to share my stories and ideas while being confined to counting my syllables per line, making sure that every word counts. Now that I have no such restriction, I'm free to express the story that I want to tell, while making certain that these characters retain those personalities that we've come to love, their strengths, their flaws, their quirks, and even some of the specific inflections they use to express themselves with. As a voice actor, I not only know what these characters should say in a given moment, but how I would expect them to say it. I sincerely hope that you'll put your trust in me to handle everything on the creative side, but let's talk about the technical side of things for a second. On that technical side is my wife, Pagan. In stark contrast to myself, Pagan understands a lot more of the technical aspects of game development, having a master's degree in computer science with her thesis directly involving computer graphics. Though she's worked all of these years to hone her skills through higher learning, her game development journey started long before that. She first taught herself how to hack Super Nintendo ROMs in assembly at age 10 using Notepad, and started developing levels for Source Engine games using Valve's Hammer editor at 12. Since then, she has become an expert in various programming languages, including C++ and Python, and gained experience with engines such as Unity and Unreal. She knows just as much about how to make a game with those engines as she understands the reasons why you wouldn't want to make a game with them. As a developer, one of her biggest inspirations was the Blue Blur himself. After playing Sonic Generations, she became obsessed with the technical feats of the Hedgehog engine, which kickstarted her dream of one day developing her own engine from scratch that could compete with, or even be better than, the visual wonders unfolding before her. And now, she's taking that chance and running with it. After years of experience working on small side projects, it all comes full circle to give her a chance to show off what she can really do with the series that gave her that initial spark of inspiration. In addition to the technical side of the game, Pagan is going to be handling music direction as well. She's an accomplished electronic music producer, having released a number of songs in a wide variety of genres over the past 12 years under various aliases. She's even been invited to perform at various conventions around the world, including the US, Canada, UK, and Germany. We want to take these skills and apply them to something meaningful that we can give back to the series and community that means so much to us. We hope that you'll join us for this new adventure, one not just for us, but for the fandom and for Sonic and his friends. Now, let's take a look at this week's progress as well as play catch up on what we were working on for the month of January. Around the beginning of the year, Pagan laid the groundwork for something we call the Cyclone Level Editor. She created a very basic user interface using ImGUI to get a feel of where all the elements should be placed, and then she set up the DirectX backend needed for drawing 2D and 3D elements in the 4 viewpoints. Those are what we call the 4 quadrants of the screen here. Her design theory for Cyclone is heavily inspired by Valve's Hammer editor because, in her words, making levels in Hammer was an absolute joy, and switching to Unreal almost made me quit game development. Meanwhile, I spent the month roughing out the story. The basic layout is complete as of the time of this weekly update, but I'm still refining some of the key plot points and making sure that everything works well in its own timeline with no major plot holes or inconsistencies. As for this past week, skipping over the art from Monday that I showed previously, Pagan on Tuesday started by describing what we need to develop our own level editor. Most video games use something called single precision floating point math to store information about all the objects in a level, but this limits the size that levels can be before rounding errors occur, meaning that Green Hill's looking a lot more like Farlands right now. Sonic Entropy will be using double precision to allow for the level to be much longer to account for Sonic's massively increased boost speed. But because most games, Sonic games included ironically, don't use double precision, most development tools don't support it either. This means that to design the types of levels that we want to make for our game, we need to first create our own level editor from scratch. For the rest of the day, Pagan wrote a code library to perform double precision math using AVX2 vector instructions, and then integrated the new code into the 2D viewports, replacing the old, slower code. After stream, she added a couple of quality of life features like toggling VSync in the viewports in case some maniac wants to hit 3000 FPS for some reason, and a keyboard shortcut to resize the viewports automatically. On Thursday's stream, Pagan continued integrating the new math code into the 3D viewport. This took a little bit longer than expected. Turns out, 3D is more complicated than 2D. But once that was working, she added keyboard and mouse controls to allow for 3D navigation. She then set up an entity component system using NTT, which will allow us to add game objects to levels, and created some test objects to show the system working. These test objects don't actually do anything, but they do exist inside the level and act as a placeholder for when we start to add more complex objects like springs and dash panels later down the line. She had a bit more work to do after the stream was over, so she also added some code which makes the normally invisible test objects actually show up on screen, highlighting which one is selected and displaying some debug information like their object type and entity ID. On Friday, Blitzy spent the day discussing and noting down for stream the sorts of things that we were and weren't interested in when it came to developing a Sonic game. This research included concepts like level design, how we would ideally make boss encounters work, what kinds of shortcuts and paths we intended to keep, and what kind of paths we'd want to discard because they just don't feel good to play through. Character feel through various control schemes and individual personality through animations or silly little extra lines of dialogue were also noted for the sake of making each character fun and cohesive to play as part of a group, while allowing them to maintain a sense of uniqueness from each other and more than just the words that they speak or the way that they speak them. This was to give the community a better sense of the kind of game we're developing, as well as have a record on video that explains the level and character design philosophy we're aiming for, so that we can stay consistent when it comes time to put tablet pen to modeling software. And that about does it for this week's round of updates. If you want to stay informed, consider subscribing so you can catch all of the latest updates every week, and drop a like if you felt like this video was informative or enjoyable in any way. It helps the project get recommended to more people. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back with more news next week.